Anyway, so I went back and I called Barbara Horgan. I said, "Well, you know, is Balanchine really wants him to come back?" And she said, "Yes, come back and we'll get you a place to stay and we'll figure something out." I went, "Okay." So I did, and the Balanchine comes out to me the first day. He goes, "Okay, here, start choreographing." And I was 19 at this point, and I went, let's see, there was no workshop, there was no formula for this in those years. And I said, what do I do? And he goes, "Well, you don't find music, choose girls, boys you want, take, and just tell the secretary and say you want 2 hours or 3 hours, do what you want." And I said, "Okay." So I did. So I chose Malcolm Arnold's Scottish Dances, which was short, about 16 minutes, 4 movements, very dancey. Chose about 16 girls. I didn't realize at the time that was very ballsy, to choose such a large group. I choreographed a little bit at Eugene Loring's, but nothing, you know, maybe as a popular solo or something, because that was part of our scholarship. We all had to choreograph a little something. But it just seemed the logical thing to do. So I chose 16 girls and 3 principal dancers. One was Star Denias, who later became a star with the Joffrey. She was a baby then. Lynn Bryson, who later went into New York City Ballet. And Bojan Spasov, who later, I think he heads Carlisle or something, or Pennsylvania Ballet School or something. Anyway, but he was a student at the School of American Ballet. So I did this ballet in 2 weeks. And then I invited Balanchine. I said, "Well, I did a ballet, you want to come watch it?" He said, "Okay." So he came in with Suzanne Farrell, because in those days they were inseparable. This was pre-marriage, before she got married. And I wasn't nervous at all. Balanchine didn't make me nervous until way later, but I wasn't nervous. I just felt support coming from him. I just felt this, "Oh, dear, show me what you did." So they did the ballet. The kids were terrified. You don't have Balanchine sitting there. But they danced, everything went fine. And then he came up to me afterwards and he goes, "Okay, is this something you did in LA?" And I went, "No." Anyway, I'll never forget this, because he kind of, to surprise Balanchine was a trick. I mean, he usually was could never fool him. And if you did try to fool, I'll tell you a story later, but he always never liked to be caught off guard, kind of, you know, he always wanted. So he said, "You didn't do this, when did you do this?" And I said, "Well, since I got here last week." And he went, "You did this in 2 weeks?" And I said, "Yes." And he went, and I realized that was surprising to him, but I hadn't thought of that it was fast. That's normal. Anyway, so then he said, "Okay, do something else, something new right away." And I went, "Okay." So then I did the Bizet Les Arlésiens suite, and then I did Morton Gould's Spirituals for Orchestra, string. It's really jazzy. You'd like it. It's really, really fun music. And I'd done the pas de deux that in LA, but I did the whole ballet there, and so I was doing like a ballet every week or 2, you know. And he was coming in and watching, and he was, "Oh, good, okay, good." And I tried to vary them. So one was classical, one was jazzy, you know. And I used a lot of acrobatics from my dad in my early life. So I used some acrobatics that weren't typical for the ballet stage. Now they are, you know, but we're going back to 1966. But everything was going along fine. And then Andre Iglesias had a company in Long Island, and he was one of the teachers at school. And he asked me to do a ballet for him. So I did revive a ballet I'd done in LA to Shostakovich for 4 girls and me, called The Class. It was kind of a classroom ballet. So I did the performance, and I sprained my ankle badly in the performance. And there actually was a video of it, so you can see when it happens, and I kind of hop around. But then after that, I couldn't take class, because, you know, while my ankle was getting better. So I asked Balanchine, and this was the first time the only time that I got tongue-tied, is I went to Barbara Horgan, who was the secretary, you know, brought me to New York, and I said, "Barbara, I can't take class in school. Do you think Mr. B would let me watch company class?" And I should back up. When I was first at the school choreographing, Balanchine invited me to come see New York City Ballet every night. And I said, "Well, I can't afford it." He said, "No." And so he gave me tickets. So I would have tickets every single performance for me to watch the company. And he said, "You have to come watch and you have to learn. You watch and learn." So I would dress up in a brown suit, because I only had one suit, because I thought you had to wear a suit. So I wore this brown suit every night, every 8 performances a week. So I was used to going to the theater and going to watch, but I never went backstage. So anyway, so I went up to him. I said to Barbara, "Do you think he'd let me watch company class?" And she said, "Ask him." And I went, and she goes, "Class is going to be, you know, at 11 o'clock. Just go in the hall outside. Just get it before he goes into class and ask." She goes, "I'm sure it'll be fine." So So I wore my suit at 11 o'clock in the afternoon. I thought, well, I have to dress up. And he was, running to get to class, and I kind of waylaid him. I said, Mr. B, can I talk to him? He said, I have class. And I said, I know, I broke my, and I was stuttering, and he said, what? He kind of looked, what? And I said, well, I sprained my ankle, can I watch class? And he went, oh, yes. So we went in, and then, the company, probably they still are, but they're very close-knit, very snooty to outsiders. This is their territory. This is the main hall of State Theater. Nobody walks in there. But here I go in this brown suit, and so everybody kind of stares at me. It was just like a film. The door opens and everybody goes, just gave me this look of death, and I'm like, so Balanchine takes a chair, and he puts it in the front, not the front, but he puts it in the side in the front, and he introduces me to the company. John, young choreographer, he's going to watch. And I went, crap. So he sits me down, and so that went on every day for about 2 weeks. I just go and watch class. I realized the suit was tacky, so I stopped wearing the suit. And then one day he comes up to me and goes, dear, how's your ankle? And I said, well, it's better. He said, why don't you take? And I went, well, I'm going to go back. He said, no, take class. And I went, here. And I went, okay. So the next day I came in, and that first class, after the bar, I thought my muscles were on fire. I have never to this day felt that kind of pain. But it wasn't a bad pain. I knew I didn't hurt anything. It's just that every single fiber of my legs were like on fire, burning. And I was like, oh my God. I'd never had a class like that at the school, and I had Glevsky's classes, and Pierre Vladimiroff, Stanley Williams. I had all the major teachers in the world, really. Plasetskaya, Messerer. I had Balanchine's class. Absolutely like, God, But everybody else survived, so so after a week or so, then it became possible, and then it was like, oh, well, I'm actually getting better. So then my ankle got fine, so then I went back to SAB. So after a few days, Diana Adams, who was still running the school, she comes up to me and she goes, John, why are you here? And I said, what do you mean? She goes, why are you taking class in the morning? You should be overtaking Balanchine's class. And I went, well, my ankle's better now, so I thought I better get back to the school. She goes, well, why? You're in the company. You should be taking the company class. Nobody had told me. Not one person had said I was in the New York City Ballet. And I went, what? And she said, well, there's a contract waiting for you on the manager's desk. I mean, and she said, didn't anybody tell you? And I went, not one person said a word. So I ran back and signed my contract and was on. And that's the beginning of that story. So then lots of things wonderful happened. It's way too long to go into now. And Balanchine had me do my first ballet when I was 20 for the company. He gave me my first principal roles when I had been in less than a year. I got a reputation for jumping in, doing ballets without even knowing. Like in 1969, so I was like, 22, the company had a tour to Monte Carlo for a big Diaghilev celebration. And Princess Grace was still alive, and it was a huge deal. The company was flown over on a private jet, chartered. But it was just the New York City Ballet and some board members and some patrons, and it just was, this is paradise, And Balanchine was in a great mood. And I was in the corps, and I had done a couple solos in some of his ballets, and other ballets. Jacques D'Amboise had done a ballet that I did the premiere in. It's the third movement lead with Violette, which is great. And that was going to be on the program in Monte Carlo. And like the second or third day, I took class. I didn't have anything to do, so I was over at the Café Paris across from the casino. And the company manager runs up to me, Ronnie Bates, Eddie Bigelow, and he said, John, he said, Balanchine's looking for you. You have to come to the studio right now. And I went, there's no rehearsal. Why? And he said, because you have to replace Eddie in Rubies tonight. And Rubies was part of Jules, which is a big new ballet that Balanchine did the year before, a year and a half before. And Eddie Villela was the superstar in those days, and Rubies was the boys' ballet. And I went, what? And he goes, Eddie hurt himself. Balanchine wants you to do Rubies tonight. And tonight was the gala on a stage in the courtyard of the Grimaldi Palace. So it wasn't just in the theater. That would have been one thing. It was a gala. And I went, okay, so I went back to the studio, and Balanchine and Patty McBride, who was the ballerina, and Eddie, who was limping terribly, and no pianist. Nobody could find him, Gordon Belzer. So it was just Balanchine, the ballet misters. I think it was John Terrace, actually. Patty, Eddie, and me. And the plan was for Eddie to do the pas de deux, and for me to do the opening and closing movements. But it was clear he really couldn't walk at all. So Balanchine said, you know, dear Clifford, he called me Clifford. He said, let's start, and please just see how you do. So luckily, because I'd been an actor, I think that was the key. And since I'd been on stage since 2 years old, and Balanchine was a non-threatening force. He was always a supportive force. I had the cojones to just say, okay, fine. And I found that I could memorize steps really fast, but I think that comes from me being an actor and having to read and memorize scripts. I don't have any other explanation for it. I mean, I don't know why, but I seem to have that ability that I could look at something, and this is in a book, so I'm not bragging about it. Balanchine actually said this to a writer once in a biography. It's in the last chapter about my ability. And it was so weird because I just did that. I just put myself into a blank state, just completely blank, and they started teaching me the choreography, which I had not understudied or anything at all. I had done the core of RUBIES, so I didn't even have time really to look at the principles. You know, that was one ballet I couldn't go out and watch every night because I was in the core of it. So I really didn't know what the principals were doing. So we had 2 hours of rehearsal. I learned the whole ballet with no music. Then at 6 o'clock, they said, be at the theater at 6, the pianist will be there by then. So I got to the theater at 6. Since I'd done the core, I kind of knew where to stay out of the way of the principal, kind of, so I wasn't too concerned about bumping into the core. But, so we had like another hour run through the music, and then I did it. And, knock on wood, I only made one minor mistake, where I kicked on the wrong side of Patty and I hit her hand a little bit with my foot, but that was it. Every music that you might think is there's a place where Patty's on one side and I'm on the other side. And we have to count 5/8, very fast eights, 1, 2, 3, 4, very fast. The first 4 of those are silent. Da, da, da. Or 5, 6, and then it comes in. So you have to catch it on the silence to do the 5/8. So I was counting like crazy, but I couldn't remember what the step was. Because you have to run in on the 5th 8 and start, and I was like blank. I was counting, I knew the 5/8, but I didn't know the step. And I didn't have contact lenses in those days, so I was blind as a bat on top of it. So I'm like gesturing to Patty on the other side, what's the step? She thought I lost the count, because that's really harder than the step, is the count. And she was going, 1, 2, 3. I said, no, not, what's the, so I tried to run across, I said, no, I can't get back, get back to my side. So I really just literally ran on the right cue, not knowing what, and like a step before I got there, I went, oh shit, yes, and I remember what the step was. That was most to this day, the biggest panic I've ever had as a performer, was running on stage blank, you would know. My God, it got to me. So I did it, everything was fine, and then Eddie came back, kind of pissed off at me, Villela. He was like, yeah, Clifford, I can't believe you did that. Yeah, well, good, yeah, you did it. Balanchine was beating. He was happy. And he was very, very happy. And he was like introducing me to Princess Grace and then David Niven, saying, oh, he learned this afternoon. Wonderful. I was like out of my mind at that point. I was like so exhausted. And I was glad it was over. And I was, I mean, that's, if I would have screwed up, I would have been cemented in his brain, you know what I mean, as a screw up. So I knew that, I couldn't fail, But it worked. And then he kept me in the ballet, splitting all the performances with Eddie, which Eddie did not like. And then when Eddie started getting older, then I took over and nobody else danced RUBIES but me until I left the company. And Balanchine was always, I'm not bragging, but Balanchine was always like that with his dancers. If he put you in that ballet, you usually didn't have an alternate. Sometimes you wouldn't even have an understudy, which is a little crazy. But and when he was choreographing, he didn't really want anybody else in the room. He was just making the ballet for you. So, and it wasn't just me. I mean, Violette and Melissa, if it was a new ballet or something, most all the dancers that he choreographed on, it was like this big gift. That was your ballet, and there was a relationship between you, the music, the choreography, and Balanchine. Now, if it was a ballet he was reviving, an old ballet, maybe there might be 2 casts. But generally speaking, in those years, I mean, it was a very personal, relationship with him, with all of his dancers, not just the leads, the core too. I mean, everybody knew, it was a really unique, I've never seen any other company